Thought you'd like that picture. It's kind of humorous, but according to my records, this message is kind of a milestone for me, believe it or not. This message today marks number 300. The 300 that I've been up here, and I think to myself, wow, I think of all the work that goes into each one of those, and I think 300 times, and I think, man. Then I think of you. I think you poor people. You are the ones that really ought to be congratulated on all this. So congratulations. You hung in there. You persevered. So anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. I go through my records, and I was going through my New Year stuff and kind of rearranging things, and I did a count, and 300. Boy, that's just right here. Yeah, that's not to mention all the other stuff that would easily double or triple on that number. But anyway, 300. Interesting, a little triviality there. So I think that number, and I think, well, you know what? I really wish, and maybe you wish too, maybe you had the Apostle Paul here instead. You know, wouldn't that be great? I know I served on 3-4 pastoral search teams, and we were always like, man, if we could only find someone like the Apostle Paul, man, we need to find somebody like that. But do you really want somebody like the Apostle Paul? You know, he didn't always score a home run every time he got up to speak. Did you know that? There were times when he put him to sleep. Literally put him to sleep. There was a time in Acts where a fellow was listening to him wax eloquently, and it was going on to midnight. Yeah, midnight. You think noon is tough. How would you like to continue to hear me till midnight? This guy fell out of a 3-story window, and he fell down, and he killed him. He died. And the Apostle Paul went out there, and through the power of the Holy Spirit, brought him back to life and back on to preaching again. And so I think to myself, I thought, wow, you guys don't have it as bad as what I thought you might have had it. So I don't feel that bad anymore. So when you think about listening to a message like today, I want you to be very careful not to fall asleep on me. Okay, we got to go on both sides of the aisle here. We did a Republican, now we got to do a Democrat. So be very careful you don't fall asleep today, because it's one of those messages that might have you do just that. So I'll try to keep things moving, and I don't want you to fall asleep. So hang in there with me, because I want you to have this warning as you think about falling asleep in the service. Charles Spurgeon said, "Remember, if we go to sleep during the sermon and die today, there are no apostles to restore us." So just remember that, okay? I can't bring you back. You're a goner. You're it. That's the most strangest introduction I've ever given to a message. But it's really where we're at in the book of Job. I'm going to give you some material that you're going to be saying, this is a yawner. This one is going to be one for the books that if there's a time I'm going to fall asleep, this is it. I know this is a lousy introduction, but we're going to hear it. We're going to hear it. And matter of fact, the good news is we're not going to hear from somebody that we've continued to hear from the book of Job. This is a brand new character that comes into play. Brand new. So that's good. But the bad news is he covers 6 chapters. 6 chapters straight. And so we want to be very careful not to fall asleep, because a lot of what he says is going to be a lot of the same material that the other 3 friends shared. So as we think about this man called Elihu, that we want to do him justice on what he is saying, what he's communicating, and we want to be able to take and apply that to our own lives. And there's going to be material here that we are able to do just that. The very first part of what he says is going to be the yawner, the first 4 chapters. Okay, so I'm going to be moving along here. If you're a note taker, there's not going to be a ton of notes. There's just keep up to speed. And when we get to the last 2 chapters, it really changes a little bit. It changes for the better. And it's really going to, and you're going to hear me say this a few times, set the stage for where we're going next week. So, without further ado, let's turn to Job chapter 32, and we're going to cover all 6 of these chapters today. All 6 of them, and we're going to have the Lord's Supper, and you're going to get out of here if Dan doesn't have us a real long closing song by noon. That's all. Okay, well, I can't take credit for that. So, chapter 32, page 438. I try not to stutter too much. I get in a hurry, and that's what usually happens. Chapter 32. As we begin to look at Elihu, let me give you a little bit of information that we learned from chapter 32. Elihu, he is the youngest one of the bunch, and he's been here during this whole time that these other 3 friends have been there. He's just been in the background and just letting the older folks say their piece. But as we soon find out very quickly that he's kind of getting a little bit hot under the collar, getting a little bit angry to what's going on in this dialogue between Job and these 3 men. And he's upset at 2 different things specifically in which the Bible tells us. He's upset at Job because Job continues to justify himself. He's upset at the 3 friends because they really had no answer to the dilemma that Job finds himself in. Oh, sure, they gave their opinions and Job refuted that, but they never responded back to that, really, with good, solid information. And so he was getting a little bit upset at what was going on during this situation. But as we will see here very soon, that he was waiting for wisdom to come out of these older gentlemen, but there was no wisdom to be had. Now, if we look at verse 6 of chapter 32, just give you kind of a little bit of flavor for what Elihu is talking about. Verse 6, chapter 32, I am young in years and you are aged. Therefore I was timid and afraid to declare my opinion to you. And I said, let days speak and let many years teach wisdom. But it is the Spirit in man, the breath of the Almighty that makes him understand. It is not the old who are wise, nor the aged who understand what is right. Therefore I say, listen to me. Let me also declare my opinion. So he gets it right. When I'm dealing with these 6 chapters, I keep having in my mind a car going down the road. And you know that when you go down the road that you get distracted. You start fidgeting with stuff in the car. Maybe it's the radio, or maybe you drop a CD on the floor and you're reaching down under the seat, or you're looking for a tissue, or maybe you're dealing with the kids in the back seat and when you reach back, then your car kind of goes off the road and you feel that thing going off the side of the road into the gravel, and then if it's a steep drop off, then you're trying to get it back up on the road, and then you get it back up on the road and you're back there dealing with the kids again and back off and go. It's kind of like the way it is with Elihu. He's going down the road, and he seems to be like he's going in a good direction. Things are going smoothly, and all of a sudden the wheels drop off the road, and he kind of gets messed up. And that's kind of like the way it is right here, what I just read to you, that he's really truthful, that just because you have a little bit of gray in your beard doesn't mean that you are wise. It doesn't mean that because you are older than the other people around you, it doesn't mean that you carry the most wisdom. That's not the case. That's no guarantee of wisdom. And he's right about that. And he's also right that it's God that gives the wisdom and the understanding. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. And he's right about that. And these 3 friends didn't have the wisdom that Job needed. The wisdom and the understanding that God provided. And he was very truthful about that. But yet the wheels go off the road when he says, now listen to me and I'll give you my opinion. That's not what Job needs. That's getting off track, and it's really not helpful for Job's situation. But this is exactly where we find Elihu. He kind of shows himself to be kind of prideful and pompous in his view and what he is achieving here with being around Job and helping, or supposedly helping him. And then he begins to wax eloquently through his discourse with Job. And he begins to tell him, Job, you are a man just like me. He's identifying with Job in a very kind of a horizontal level. I'm just like you. I like what he says in verse 6, especially in chapter 32. Excuse me. It's not verse 6. Yes, it is verse 6 of 33. I'm sorry. Verse 6 of chapter 33. Behold, I am towards God as you are. I too was pinched off from a piece of clay. I like that. It's you and I are created beings. God, in His sovereignty, He knew exactly who you and I was going to be, and He pinched off a piece of clay, and He molded us just to be like who we are. And Elihu is relaying to Job, you're just a man just like I am, and we are pursuing after God. And so he identifies with him, and then he takes it to the next level, and the things that Job said in the past conversations, he begins using those words to achieve his purpose with Job. He says, you claim that you're innocent, but really, I don't think you are because of your life. And you claim that God is silent, but you don't realize how God has been communicating with you. And he tells Job about how the different ways that God communicates with with mankind. And Job, this is the way God is communicating with you, but you're simply not listening to what He says. So listen to me, and I will tell you what God is telling you. And it seems very clear. Verse 31, pay attention, O Job, listen to me. Be silent, and I will speak. As if he has some great divine revelation from God Himself that he's going to communicate to Job. And then we get into the second, this third and fourth chapters of what we're going to be looking at today. Again, he gives this theology about God, and the same type of theology that we heard before. And first he addresses the men, and he tells them the very nugget of what he's saying here. It's found in verse 11, and he says this, for according to the work of man, he will repay him, and according to his ways. It's the same old message. You do this, and God is going to repay you, either good or bad. You do wickedness, God will repay you for that wickedness. And Job, this is what is happening as he directs his attention to Job. Job, you have been going down the wrong road. God knows what you are doing, and now you are suffering the consequences. Job, God is communicating with you, and He's judging you accordingly. He speaks to all the men then in this very setting, and brings his summary to his audience. Job is an ignoramus. He has no idea what he's doing. He speaks nonsense. His thoughts don't make sense. His direction in life is being rebuked, and he's just not being accountable for his actions. Job just simply needs to be accountable for the things that he's doing. His motives were impure. We know what you are all about, Job. We know that you are siphoning from these people around you. We know that your ways are unjust, and now God is demanding His judgment upon you. You think you're just, but you're really not. Your guilt is being displayed. Now that's a run through those first 4 chapters. I told you it'd be quick, didn't I? And it's really getting to where I want to spend some time. Chapters 36 and 37. And we need to understand what is happening in the context of this discussion and this process in Job's life. As we get into chapter 36, he begins to get the wheels back up on the road and continue to go down the road in the direction that God is ultimately directing not just Job and not just the 3 friends, but Elihu as well. They are heading in a direction, and he's going to be right on track in chapters 36 and 37. He's going to be saying things that are really relevant to all of our lives. We know that God Himself watches over the righteous. Look at chapter 36, verse 5 through 7. Behold, God is mighty and does not despise any. He is mighty in strength of understanding. He does not keep the wicked alive, but gives the afflicted their right. He does not withdraw His eyes from the righteous. We'll stop there. We know that. And if you are one that is pursuing after God and you are living according in obedience, God watches over you. Even though you may be in silence because like what Job is going through, understand and count on the very truth that God watches over the righteous. He chastens after the righteous. Aren't you glad of that? Aren't you glad that we take the wrong turn, that God doesn't just continue to allow us to go without chastening us back? And that's exactly what God does. And when that person responds correctly, God restores him. Aren't you glad of that too? Good, reliable truth. But yet, if we persist in that wrong direction, in that disobedience, there are consequences. So these are all reliable truths that we need to understand about God, and I'm so thankful for myself. And so as we get into the rest of what we want to talk about this morning, I want to just give to you some incredible words that Elihu speaks, that what it's going to do, and let me give you another word picture in your mind. Elihu is going to be used by God to set the stage. To set the stage, and if you've ever been involved with drama or some kind of plays, you understand what that's all about. And I'll give you the analogy just so you can kind of envision in a tangible way. We have things that happen up on this stage. And there are certain things that are placed around because they are relevant to what we are doing. And what we have been experiencing now in the book of Job is Job. He's been kind of like the center figure of what's going on here. He's been we've been talking about his suffering and the dealings in his life, and these three friends have been on stage talking back and forth to Job. And we hear the same old thing that's going back and forth, and they're sitting there in the audience, us, we're sitting there and we're falling asleep. And it's like, is this ever going to end? Are we ever going to get through this play, this drama, because it's back and forth, back and forth? What is the point of this drama? It's just, I'm not big into drama, especially when it seems like it's going nowhere. And it seems like this is where we're at. But Elihu, and whether he knows it or not, he is going to be used by God to say some very significant things that's going to be clearing the stage, pushing things back off to the side, and those things are going to be dropping into the shadows, and now on center stage is something extremely significant to the whole book of Job. He is going to be fixing the spotlight upon God, who will be taking the stage in chapter 38. That's next week. This week, we're setting the stage. Listen to what he says in chapter 36, verse 22. Turn the page here. Behold, God is exalted in His power. Who is a teacher like Him? Who has prescribed for Him His way? Or who can say, you have done wrong? Remember to extol His work of which men have sung. All mankind has looked on. All mankind has looked on it. Man beholds it from afar. Behold, God is great, and we know Him not. His number of years is unsearchable. For He draws up the drops of water. They distill His midst in rain, which the sky pour down and drop on mankind abundantly. Can anyone understand the spreading of the clouds, the thunders of His pavilion? Behold, He scatters the lightning about Him and covers the roots of the sea. For by these He judges people and gives food in abundance. He covers His hands with the lightning and commands it to strike the mark. Its crashing declares His presence. The cattle also declare that He rises. At this also my heart trembles and leaps out of its place. Keep listening to the thunder of His voice and the rumbling that comes from His mouth. Under the whole heaven He lets it go, and His lightning to the corners of the earth. After His voice roars, He thunders with His majestic voice, and He does not restrain the lightnings when His voice is heard. God thunders wondrously in His voice, and He does great things that we cannot comprehend. Stop right there. Isn't it amazing to hear the words that He's using to describe the one that's going to be taken center stage in chapter 38? This is the one we've been talking about all along. In Job, you've been going through this suffering, and men over here, your friends, have been refuting you or talking back and forth and thinking they have the wisdom. And Job, you're lost in your confusion and understanding, and all of this stuff is going on. Just wait. Here He comes. He's coming. He's just about ready to take center stage. This is the one. This is the main character that the spotlight will be fixed upon. And everything else will be pushed into shadows. Then we will get understanding. Then we will get wisdom. And then we will get on track on what God is doing in all of our lives. It's all about God. And when you and I can not only comprehend that, but when we begin to move our life in that direction and stay the course, that is the beginning of maturity. And until we can get those wheels back on the road and heading in that right direction, then our life is going to be on and off the road in all different directions. We must continue to focus. That's all about God. It really have much to do with Job. It doesn't have much to do with these three men. God allows us from time to time to be part of a bigger picture of what He is doing. And that is what I want to be involved with, and I hope you do too. The big picture about God and what He is doing. Our lives need to be more in the shadow, and the spotlight needs to be upon God Himself. And oftentimes we kind of push Him out of the spotlight, and we want ourselves to be in the spotlight. But He does a wonderful job at painting the picture and directing us where our hearts need to go. And so as we think about this application here this morning, we need to understand, and it's really difficult for us to understand, but Job is going through this suffering. He doesn't know that things are going to change. He doesn't know that God is about ready to speak, that God is going to start redirecting all of this stuff in his life, and the corner is going to turn. It's only a moment away. It's very soon. It's going to be over. But yet it's really hard to understand that as we are going through this. God is setting the stage. When He is finished, we will see how God has masterfully worked in the life of Job and these three friends in directing the hearts and the lives of these three people. God is about ready to do something very significant, and we need to understand that. Maybe you are here today and you're going through some suffering, some very difficult time, and you wonder, is there any way to get through this? Is there any corner going to be turned? And God could be turning the corner in your life at any second. At any moment, you could turn the corner and you look back and say, wow, God did something very significant. And you know that. You and I know that. Okay, we believe that. The problem is, what do we do in the meantime? And this is what I want to kind of hit upon, because this is where it's at. How do we deal with this suffering? What do we do? How can we get through to the next day? Because this anguish, this tough time is weighing down upon me. I don't know if I can make it to the next corner. I don't think I can do it. Well, let me give you something very practical in which you and I need to get through these days, through these difficult times before the corner turns. And I think it would have meant all the difference in the world if Job could have had this. Friends. Something like that. Something very simple. Job needed to have some good, godly friends in their lives. And maybe it comes in the form of a family member or family members. Ones that are godly, truly godly, that have the right perspective, that really seek after Him. Those people that will listen and encourage you and cheer you on in the Lord. We need to have those. Can you imagine how much different Job's life would have been if he had those? But he didn't. And actually what it did is it put more anguish upon his life. So I think we need to be very careful about the people we build our lives into. And automatically, I hope a few of you are thinking small groups. That's exactly where you can find those small friends. Those true friends in a small group setting that you can start building into each other's lives so that when you are coming into those difficult times, you can lean hard on those people. Oh, I wish Job would have had friends like that, but yet he didn't. We need to be very careful that we're not adding to the anguish in people's lives. So we need to build each other up, and we talked about these couple verses in our visionary meeting. We need to spur each on in the growth of the Lord. Build each other up in love. The Apostle Paul says, speaking the truth in love, we're to grow up in every way into Him who is the head, into Christ, from whom the whole body, joined and held together by every joint, with which it is equipped. When each part is working properly, makes the whole body grow so that it builds itself up in love. We need to be building this structure together, building each other up, growing in the maturity of the Lord. And what a difference it makes as we are going through the times of suffering. I think this is a great lead-in to where we're heading this morning. As we gather around the table this morning, as we think about coming together as brothers and sisters in Christ. If you have placed your faith in Christ and you stand before the Father whole, it is only because of the body and the blood of Christ. You have surrendered your life and placed your faith in Him, and you stand right before Him. If you have done that, if you remember and you are walking in obedience to that, then you are welcome around this table. It's the family of God coming around the table so that we can remember His death, His body, His blood. Those very elements that pay the price of your sin and mine. And we never want to forget that. And so we come around that table as brothers and sisters in the Lord. But also, as brothers and sisters, sometimes we don't get along with each other, do we? We get, they're kind of like a cat and a dog. And that's the way it is in families sometimes. Because we are selfish people. I'm a selfish people. And you are a selfish people. We have number one in focus too many times. Number one being me, number one being you. And that's what we want. And sometimes we clash heads because what you want is different than what I want. And we go at each other, and there's bitterness and envy and all kinds of stuff that's just goes on, and it doesn't. And we need to take care of that unless we come to the table in an unworthy fashion. We come to the table with our hands dirty, as I always say, or our hearts dirty in this case. And so we want to make sure that our hearts are right with one another before we come to the table. If you find yourself where I need to make a phone call this afternoon, or I need to go and I need to spend some time with brother so-and-so, you need to do that before you come to the table in a worthy fashion, as Paul tells us. And so we want to take our time to do that. And as we take a few minutes to examine our hearts, the men will come and begin to distribute the bread. And as we do, like always, I want to give you a couple words that will help you to worship in this setting. Paul says He died for all, that those who live might no longer live for themselves, but for Him who for their sake died and was raised. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away, and behold, the new has come. That's cause to worship, folks. That's cause to sing out and praise and to really magnify the great name of Jesus. And we want to just do that. We want our hearts to be right, and we want to move forward in our relationship with the Lord. But we can't if there's that sin that entangles our lives. So let's examine our lives. And as we do, the men will come forward, and Stan will be playing some songs to help lead us. Jesus said to take and eat. Just a few more words of encouragement or memorial or remembrance, however you want to call it. It comes from the book of 2 Corinthians, and once again, All this is from God, who through Christ reconciled us to himself and gave us the ministry of reconciliation, that in Christ God was reconciling the world to himself, not counting their trespasses against them, and entrusting to us the message of reconciliation. Therefore, we are ambassadors for Christ, God making his appeal through us. We implore you on behalf of Christ to be reconciled to God. For our sake, he made him, Jesus, to be sin, who knew no sin, so that in him, Jesus, we might become the righteousness of God. Jesus said to take and drink. Father, thank you so much for the opportunity to gather around your table. And God, it's only because of Jesus that we can do this. And so, God, I pray that as we have examined our hearts and as we